Neil Young said it's better to burn out than fade away, but for the Kinks, one of the all-time greatest rock and roll bands, they faded away. This is the sixth and final video in my series looking at every Kinks studio album, breaking down to 6 distinct eras. And I call this era the fade out. The last 10 years of the band, 3 studio albums and an EP, and almost no one was paying attention. I've never really considered this period very important or very good, but if I've learned anything through this exercise is that when you listen to the Kinks, no matter what they're up to,
no sacrifice is too great for authenticity.
It's usually pretty good. So I've taken some time and re-listened to these albums and the EP, and I'm gonna share what I think is the best and what are the lost masterpieces of the Kinks' final decade. Right now, on Robert's Record Corner. I'm Robert.
I mean, the album's called Think Visual. And I've always thought when I write songs, I have an idea in my head, I have a vision of something in my head.
In 1986, the Kinks released Think Visual, 11 songs, 44 minutes. Originally, Ray Davies had hoped this would be a concept album, kind of telling the story of the Spiv character that was introduced in the Come Dancing video. Mercifully, that idea was abandoned. What you're left with is an album with a really, really bad album cover. It has all the trappings of the mid-'80s, and it's an album that I never really paid attention to when it came out. I haven't really listened to it much since.
You don't fancy me though, do you? All right, let's move on.
But listening to it again, I realize it's actually pretty good. The best known song, the third single, is Lost and Found, the second song where he talks about his new transplanted home of New York and bracing for a hurricane coming. Repetition kind of covers some similar ground that you would see in Predictable. It even borrows the lyric from Do It Again.
Now we're back where we started, right back where you started, day after day.
A neat little song that's kind of a leftover from the scrapped concept album idea is Video Shop. I get this song in my brain and I can't get rid of it. Kind of has a ska beat. In my reckoning, it's the best attempt that Ray Davies has for kind of a Caribbean type song.
I've got a bank loan and I've opened up my very own video shop.
In the 1980s, Ray Davies was making a lot of what I consider breakup songs. But I think the best one is How Are You, which I find really genuine and sweet.
It's been a while. I haven't seen you for at least a year or more.
He kind of conversational lyric that's built over the same 2-note progression that you would heard in Tired of Waiting for You, the hit from the 1960s. This is kind of a sequel to that song, meeting an old flame on the street, talking about all my problems, but then genuinely saying,
How are you?
I think Natural Gift is a really great song on the second side. It's kind of built off the Sweet Jane Velvet Underground progression, but done on piano, and I think purposely because his vocal performance is very much conjuring Lou Reed. Now, in the middle of it, a song about someone's natural gifts and how they look and how they can use this in their career is interrupted with the most 1986 synthetic, artificial thing you could possibly have.
You gotta stop this depression you're in now.
And I don't know if Ray is making some really unfortunate production decisions or if he's making a cheeky statement of natural gifts in the most unartificial sounds you could have. It's followed with Killing Time, I think a great little song that a lot of people have missed. That sounds a little bit to me like a song that the Replacements might have done a little later in one of their later albums. I think it's apt because I consider the Replacements kind of the American Kinks of the 1980s, thought about, not understood, always getting in their own way of success. Killing Time's a great song. Now, Dave Davies writes 2 songs on this album. The first, I think, is really, really bad, and it was the first single in the United States that had a video. Where he's kind of a pandering lyric where he's name-dropping cities around the United States, I think in the hopes that DJs would play it on the radio. It's not very good, but the other Dave Davies song that closes the album, this kind of sounds like an Ultravox version of the Kinks. I would have loved to hear much more from this kind of sound.
We are born to this fantasy.
This album, ultimately, for 1986, I think is a better album than Rolling Stone's Dirty Work from that year. Dirty Work kind of sounds better, but there's much less inspired than what's happening here with Think Visual. Think Visual, you have my attention. 1989 was an absolutely epic year. It's the year of the fall of the Berlin Wall. It's the year where a solitary man stood down tanks in Beijing at Tiananmen Square. And musically, it was the year of the big comeback, particularly for 1960s rock legends who kind of lost their way in the 80s. Saw that with the Rolling Stones with Steel Wheels, with Neil Young with Freedom, Lou Reed with New York, Bob Dylan with Oh Mercy. Even Roy Orbison had a comeback in 1989. It was also a big year for rock bands from the 1970s. The B-52s turned from an underground band to a mainstream success. Bonnie Raitt finally found success with Nick of Time, which won her 3 Grammys. Tom Petty released his most iconic album, Full Moon Fever, in 1989. And then there's what Billy Joel did in 1989.
What else do I have to say?
Which went #1. But what about the Kinks? The Kinks seemed poised for a comeback in '89, right? They were releasing an album too. They were 1960s rock legends that lost their way in their 80s. But they gave us this, UK Jive, an album that came and went without notice.
Big-time success remains elusive for the current Kinks album UK Jive, which hasn't sold very well.
Within a couple of years, it was out of print in the US. It's the only album to date by the Kinks that you can't stream on Spotify. How Do I Get Close was a single. Maybe the best known song on the album had a video. To me, it sounds like a band trying to open up for Def Leppard in 1989, and not in a really good way. I think it's kind of bad. But things pick up on the second side of this album. I like all of these songs better than the first 5 songs. One good one is War Is Over, which the song itself takes the title from John and Yoko and gives it the full Fab Four treatment.
They sacrifice their lives to make a dream come true.
And I think if they had released that as a single, made kind of a spoofy magical mystery tour type video, they might have had a hit on their hands. As is, the song that anchors this album and was released as a single is Down All the Days to 1992. And it's a fantastic song. And a very funny one. It starts unapologetically with this kind of final countdown type synths. I think consciously so, because they're looking towards 1992, 3 years in the future when the UK would be further integrating into the EU.
Very optimistic song, which is a change for me. So people always accuse me of writing depressing songs. Is there a salad dressing on that?
And the song supposes that all the problems in England will be gone, everything will be successful.
There's gonna be a celebration in 1992.
And it didn't turn out that way. And the video hints at that. If repeat viewings of the video really kind of expands what that story is, and you see the kid returning to the house, no one's there, it's deserted, just a little bit of memorabilia of the past. Things didn't turn out as well as they had hoped. And in fact, England would Brexit its way out of the EU. Ray seemed to know this all along. It's a really good song. Another good one is the ballad that follows it, Looney Balloon.
Drift away, just drift away.
And the album ends with Dave Davies' angsty song, Dear Margaret, very on-the-nose political statement directed towards Margaret Thatcher. Dave Davies recorded 2 more of his songs for this album that didn't make it. One of them is better than any song on the first side and better than Dear Margaret. Why the Kinks didn't put that on the album, I don't know.
And it was like, you know, 2 40-year-old-ish men actually having fist fights in the studios a bit. You know, I thought that we would never do that again.
Ultimately, the UK Jive was not a comeback for the Kinks. It was an album that absolutely disappeared almost as soon as it released. Kinks never get a break. Now, on the way to the final studio album of the Kinks' entire career, the Kinks made a little detour to make a 5-song EP in 1991. Had 2 live songs and 3 new songs called Diga. And for a lot of Kinks fans, this was a return to classic form of the Kinks. The 80s were over, the Kinks were back. And in truth, the song Diga does have this kind of bouncy, upbeat feel that's a little bit music hall.
Did you ever think that it would get this bad?
In it, they pay tribute to their own song Sunny Afternoon in the middle of a verse.
Drove many cars in the summertime.
Ray is kind of co-opting a Dylan voice from the mid-60s. You can hear it in the way he says Cuban heels, which is lifted from the Dylan song I Shall Be Free from 1964.
And my Cuban heels are hurting my feet.
He even refers to the Chelsea drugstore from a certain Rolling Stones song. On the whole, I like this song, but it sounds a little bit like a Jeff Lynne production for me, so fashionable at that time. And if there's one thing I would ever say about Jeff Lynne as a producer is I don't really care for Jeff Lynne as a producer. It's a good song. There is another song on the EP that I find, if not better, more compelling.
Eins, zwei, drei, vier.
When I listen to this, I take this as a full-on wind-up of Achtung Baby U2.
Life in the city started to get me down.
I mean, he's making fun of Bono, isn't he?
All traveling to America, into the arms of America.
Now, while the Kinks were recording the EP Diga, they were in the studio, Conch Studios in London, and recording what would become their last studio album, which at 16 songs absolutely sprawls. If you look at a list of the longest Kinks albums of all time, number 3 you have Preservation Act 2, which was 67 minutes. Number 2 is Everybody's in Showbiz, which was 69 minutes and 26 seconds. But Phobia, their last studio album, is 71 minutes. And spoiler alert, this album did not need to be 71 minutes long. The real tragedy of it is that the Kinks were recording this in early 1991, but didn't release it for almost 2 years into 1993, which means it came out on the other side of the great Rubicon of rock and roll history. And that's the thing, that's music that was made just before Nirvana, that didn't understand how music would change yet, afterwards became immediately and irreversibly and unforgivably out of time. And half of Phobia is completely out of time. Had they not waited, maybe it would have landed differently. But what you have is something kind of like a run-of-the-mill, on-the-nose rock band. I mean, the song Drift Away kicks in like a Bon Jovi song. The title track with its little tinny tube guitar sounds like something Great White might do. A lot of talk is made about the duet called Hatred, a Duet, where Ray and Dave sing and profess their hate for one another. There's a far better duet between Ray and Dave on this album. It's tucked away near the end of the album, lost to time, called Close to the Wire.
Search for an answer over land and overseas.
Dave is playing kind of slightly Dire Straitsy kind of guitars, but it really takes over those vocals. That's a great song. And that's the thing about Phobia. There's a lot of great songs here. In fact, if you trim away from 71 minutes to 41 minutes, get rid of 25 to 30 minutes of this record, you're left with something really good. In fact, in the description of this video, look for my Spotify list for Phobia 45, which I've cut away the music that I don't like, and I think you're left with an album that could have been the best Kinks album of the last 10 or 15 years. One keeper is the lush ballad Only a Dream, which was a single. In it, it's kind of bittersweet and funny, and Ray recounts a chance meeting on an elevator to poetic effect that only Ray Davies could do.
I didn't think she'd even look at me. She actually smiled at me and said, "Hiya, handsome, have a good day." Was it real or only a dream?
It's a great song. Over the Edge starts with this kind of carnival keyboard and then kind of descends into this declining but upbeat progression that recounts paranoia and the decay of democracy.
Democracy's a shadow of its former glory.
Which seems pretty apt for our times now. And then you get to the last song on the last Kinks studio album, a single called Scattered. And it is absolutely breathtakingly sweet, heartbreaking, and wonderful. It's a fantastic Kinks song that no one really heard.
Like a seed that is sown, all the children are scattered.
Instead of lamenting how predictable life could be, or telling the story of a little man trying to get to work on time, or pay the bills, or Ray wrestling with his own demons, Ray in this song is stepping back from himself and giving a perspective on the reality of life that we all share.
And the fields where we gathered are overgrown in weeds and in tatters.
Apparently was inspired years before when his mother died, and it took him years to finish this. It could have been morose, but it's comforting, it's uplifting, kind of this taking stock of what life ultimately is.
I guess I'll never be here again. Now my life is all scattered.
And it feels to me a perfect way to wrap up 30 years of a fairly angsty discography where the only character that ever gets to win is the narrator from Lola. I love the song. After Phobia, the Kinks would release a couple new songs on live albums, but for all practical purposes, Phobia marked the end of the Kinks discography, at least to me. Now, as with all eras, the fade-out period had a lot of classics in it. I think that the best album is Think Visual, the best promise and sound was Phobia, and I think that lost classics abound through this period, as with all periods of the Kinks. And so I have 12 songs that I think are absolute epic songs from this period that a lot of people don't know about. From Think Visual, Lost and Found, How Are You, Natural Gift, Killing Time, and When You Were a Child. From UK Jive, Down All the Days, and War Is Over, and the bonus track Perfect Strangers. I'd keep Diga from the EP, and from Phobia, Only a Dream, Close to the Wire, and Scattered. Those dozen songs are really good. I have more Kinks videos coming. I'll rank all their albums, maybe look at the Dave songs more closely, or albums like Soap Opera. But for now, I'm gonna give a little break to the Kinks. Now this whole thing started about 5 years ago during the quarantine, when I wanted to make videos about the Kinks and think about them in terms of eras as I've outlined in these 6 eras, but I realized there was a lot I didn't know. I hadn't really listened to Preservation Acts 1 and 2, hadn't listened to Percy, hadn't listened to Phobia. I needed to do some work. And so I got pretty obsessed. In fact, my now ex will tell you that I was completely obsessed by the Kinks during the quarantine and listening to nothing but the Kinks and getting more Kinks albums and mono versions of records. But I can say safely that she'll always be, as a result of that, a Kinks fan. Thank you very much for thinking about the Kinks, listening to the Kinks, talking about the Kinks. God save the Kinks. More Kinks coming. Please like and subscribe, it really helps. See you soon on Robert's Record Corner. By the way, I think this is an apt metaphor for the Kinks. A gold dome on Route 66 surrounded by a chain link fence.